Good morning. Start the meeting this morning. First is unfinished business. Just before we get started, if anyone has a cell phone, please just make sure that it's muted. And when we call the application, the applicants sit over on this side, and anyone in opposition is welcome to sit on that side. So the first unfinished business, or the only unfinished business item, is application A 2019-24. Just 51 Benton Street. Anyone here in support or opposition? Come forward, please.
Good morning.
Good morning. Your name?
My name is Osama Abu Nassar. I'm an architect working with as an agent for the owners.
Okay. I guess the application has been amended. From what I can see, you're in agreement with that amendment?
Yes.
Okay. Just before we carry on, the one thing that I'd like to suggest in regards to the recommendation, if it is considered, is in item number 2, after the words, or the word available, I'd like to put in for parking use at all times, just to clarify that. So it would be parking spaces are available for parking use at all times. Just to clarify it so it doesn't become snow storage again. Anyone have any questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, I agree with your addition to clause number 2. This is fairly straightforward. It's an existing situation. Even though it's a fairly large parking reduction, it seems to work, so I move that this be approved with the conditions as amended.
Second?
Actually, Mr. Chair, I have some questions.
Sure.
I'm just wondering, the rate that's set out on page 3, how was this arrived at? The rate is 30% of the building, a plaza calculation plus a health clinic calculation at 70%. I'm just curious as to how that ratio was arrived at for calculating the parking.
Through you, Chairman. You may know maybe the history of the building. It was the first phase was built a few years ago, a couple of years ago, the ground floor, and the second floor just was vacant for some time. However, this is not an addition to the building. It's just an existing vacant space to be used as specialized medical office. I may understood correctly your question.
With this conversion to medical office space on the second floor, is the entire building being used for health clinic?
Correct.
Okay, so are you able to advise why a portion of the parking rate is based on plaza calculation?
I didn't catch the question. Sorry, I didn't understand.
Have you reviewed the staff report? Through you, Mr. Chair, have you reviewed the staff report?
With respect to the parking, I don't.
I'm sorry. I'm Sam Hassan. I'm one of the owners of the building. If you're referring to the calculation, the transportation report that was based on a plaza, I'm not sure why did they state that, but the report was made based on the actual space. They sent someone from them and made the calculation based on our actual use in the space. So I'm not sure why would they use that term, plaza.
Yeah.
Perhaps staff can shed some light on this question. The plaza calculation was used because there are 3 or more separate businesses in the building. And it is a different rate than if we were to take each individual use. It's actually a better rate for this site. But recognizing that there are health practitioners in there and they tend to use more parking requirements, the balance of the site, which was 70, it was a 30%, 70% split, so that the 70% would be calculated at the higher health office split. while the 30% of the building was to be calculated at the plazas. But it's just to help with the numbers that were required for the site. And then we asked that the applicant seek professional advice regarding whether or not that would be appropriate for this site. And the applicants sought the services of a local transportation engineering firm to do the calculations and to confirm whether or not that would be appropriate for this site. And the determination was made that in fact it would be sufficient given its location within just minutes from the downtown, within a major transit station area. There's a transit stop not that far. There's parking available, public parking available with like across the street. And I mean like in a structured parking garage, not just on-street parking. So all those factors factored in contributed to the determination being made that it was appropriate, this ratio split was appropriate for the site.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was very helpful. I'm prepared to second the motion.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll get started with the regular agenda. The first item is a sign application. It's 2019-008, 72 Wilson Ave. If anyone support or opposition, come forward, please. Good morning. Your name?
Maria Torres.
Good morning. Have you had an opportunity to review staff report?
Yes.
Recommending approval with conditions. There was a note, I just have a question for traffic, and there was a note about to ensure that proposed sign is located outside of the driveway, the DVT, and I noticed that this was not part of a condition. Would it be advantageous or prudent to include that as a condition, just for housekeeping?
Yes, that would be correct.
All right, so I'm recommending or suggesting that we add a fourth condition to that effect. Anyone else have any questions or comments? Bob?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I agree with your comment about the DVT. I'd also like to add an extra condition that the sign be constructed as per the rendering that they have provided in the with their package.
You're all right
Sorry,
with that?
can you repeat that, please?
Pardon me?
Sorry, can you repeat that, please?
I'm recommending that the committee add an extra condition that the sign be constructed as per the drawings supplied with your application.
Okay.
All right, it's a further amendment. Any other questions or comments? Motion?
Mr. Chair, I move this be approved as amended.
Second? Scott?
I'll second, Mr. Chair.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Please be advised that this council does not have final approval for signs. We make a recommendation to council, and that they will be meeting April 29th. So it would be suggested that you attend that meeting. Thank you. That's only for sign applications and fence applications. It's not for the balance of the applications. Sure. Good, thank you. All right, next applications, A 2019-26 at 607 Victoria Street North. Anyone support or opposition, come forward, please.
Morning.
Good morning, your name?
Eddie Partito.
Good morning. Have you had an opportunity to review staff's report?
I have, yes.
Okay, they're recommending approval with the condition. And just clarify that because the report just said approval. Anyone have any questions or comments? Motion?
Mr. Chair, I think this is an excellent application and appropriate for the site. I move that the application be approved, subject to the conditions set out in the staff report.
Second? Scott?
I'll second, Mr. Chair.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next application is A 2019-29, that's 150 Eagle Crest Street. Supporter opposition, come forward, please.
Good morning.
Good morning, your name?
Dino Lopez.
Dino, if you had an opportunity to review staff's report,
I have.
they've recommended approval. Question, do you have a building permit?
I do not.
You do not, okay. Once again, we'd just like to make a friendly recommendation, or addition or condition of recommendation. That is that the applicant apply for a building permit. Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to ask for the same condition. I think we should put a timing on that too. Perhaps I could get from staff what a reasonable time frame for that would be.
I think I'd like to just find out from the applicant sort of what their timing would be, but I think a few months would be in order. Yeah.
Similar question to the applicant then. How long do you think you can put together a building permit?
I think a few months is fine.
So perhaps till the end of June? Would that be sufficient time? Or?
Sure, yes.
Okay.
Perhaps we make it July 1st of 2019?
All right. All right. Anyone have anything else?
Through you, Mr. Chair, a question for staff. I note the staff report speaks to this being relief for an enclosure around an existing second-story balcony. Just seeking clarification because to me it looks like the enclosure is actually at grade below the balcony? Or is it for the shelter above the second-story balcony?
I believe it's for the enclosure that is below, that you're seeing there in the photograph.
So it's an enclosure of an existing patio? It's essentially the setback that's created by the ground floor.
Correct.
Okay, because I found that confusing when I read the staff report because it looked like it was relating actually to the balcony. I'm not sure if we need to amend the recommendation. To simply legalize the rear property line setback? Because I think reference to the existing second-story balcony might create some confusion going forward.
Mm-hmm.
So it's referring to the second-story balcony above the enclosed building.
So is that...
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, so the setback is measured, because if you look at the photos, it appears that the enclosure protrudes well beyond the second-story balcony. So I assume that the setback is being measured from that protrusion and not the second-story balcony.
Yeah.
So through you, Mr. Chair, perhaps we can amend the recommendation to be simply legalizing an existing rear yard setback of 3.73 meters.
That's fine.
All right. Anyone else?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I agree with our colleague and with you as well. The condition needed to be clarified, and we also need the building permit, so I will move that this be approved as amended.
Second? Jennifer, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next application is A 2019-30, 176 Woolwich Street. Anyone in support or opposition, come forward, please. Good morning. Your name?
Stephanie Wright.
Okay, Stephanie, have you had an opportunity to review staff's report?
Yes.
And they're recommending approval with condition. There's also a GRCA fee condition that needs to be inserted in this as well. So there would be two conditions. Anyone have any questions or comments? Scott?
Just a comment through to the applicant. Do you understand the condition that's been requested and what's required?
We were going to go upstairs after this meeting and find out exactly what we have to do.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just following up on that comment, I noticed that condition as well, and I thought it might be a bit onerous for the extent of the scope of this application for a one-off homeowner simply extending their existing garage to have to go through a full tree management plan. I don't know if it can be scoped in any way to the lands immediately surrounding the footprint of the proposed extension or something like that, because this is an extensive property, and the development is a very small portion of that.
I think maybe part of the tree preservation plan is to determine exactly what has to be maintained and what will come out as a result of this development. Recognizing it's a large property, but I mean, it's large with a lot of trees on it, so the intent is to ensure that development will not take out any more trees than are required. In terms of scoping it, it's probably something that can be scoped, and I think a conversation with our environmental planning staff would be able to scope that down and narrow it down for the applicant. I don't know how you want to reflect that in any decision that is made here today, but without having the data in terms of what the health of the trees are and without knowing exactly, I'm sure that something like this could be scoped down, but recognizing that the applicants are probably not intending to clear cut all of the trees, but we also want to preserve as much as we can on site. So,
thank you, Mr. Chair. A similar question to staff, because I'm kind of sympathetic to the applicant in that they're dealing with a kind of an antiquated agricultural zone on this property, and if it was a residential zone, would the applicant have had to do a tree management plan if this was a residential zone?
If a property is well treed, we always request it. Again, the scale and scope of that is determined together with the environmental staff and with a consultant that is retained. I'm not suggesting that the scope is as large as, say if we're doing an entire plan of subdivision, but I mean, if we don't ask for it, we don't have any assurances, to know what the health of the trees are and what the condition of the trees are, and then what proper measures we have to ensure that they remain healthy and remain perhaps unimpacted, or that the impact, if any, is mitigated. That's the intent of the condition.
Mr. Chair, because reading the report, there seems to be just one tree that the Environmental Services Department are interested in. I would ask consideration of adding the word scoped tree preservation plan for the lands in front of the condition, just to give direction to staff of what we're looking for.
Jennifer?
I agree with the direction that this is going. I think if we just leave it at scope, there's a lot of ambiguity there for interpretation. I don't know if we can tie it down a bit further to perhaps scoped to the extent of the trees of interest to staff.
Within the proposed...
Or within a certain distance of the proposed addition. I think there's a creek that traverses the property as well. If that's correct, maybe it could be... No? Okay. I'm misreading the plan.
It's wetland. It's designated wetland, but not a creek.
Okay. I think the suggestion is for the area surrounding the proposed addition. I don't know if we want to limit that to a certain meter distance or just leave it at that.
You need to add in then taking into consideration the drip lines, the existing trees, and generally that probably would suffice.
That works for me, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, we'll amend it like that accordingly, I guess, in accordance with the taking into consideration of the drip lines, the existing trees within the construction area. Bob?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I think we also need another condition for the applicant should apply for a building permit.
All right. Okay. Anything else? Motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll move that this application be approved, subject to condition 1 as amended, and a second condition requiring a building permit.
Second?
By a certain date?
Yeah, and GRCA fees, there's 3 conditions, actually, yeah. Yes. Yeah. All right. Second.
Mr. Chair, I'll second that as amended for the 3 conditions.
Okay, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next application is A 2019-3124 Gocko Street. Support or opposition, come forward, please. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name's Heather Price with GSP Group on behalf of the owner.
Great, Heather. Had an opportunity to review staff's report.
I have.
They're recommending approval. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Scott?
Just a quick question for staff. I know the variance is very slight, but was there a request for a parking justification study or not?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that was taken care of, I believe, a few years ago already before they built the building.
All right. Anyone else? Or a motion?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think this is fairly straightforward, so I move that this application be approved without any conditions.
Second, Scott?
Second, Mr. Chair.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next application is A 2019-32. That's 262 to 286 Kingswood Drive. Support or opposition, come forward, please.
Good morning.
Good morning. Your name?
Victor Labreche Patterson and Associates, on behalf of the owner applicants, who also Dana McKay from the ownership group is with me.
Okay, thank you. Have you had an opportunity to review staff report?
Yes, I have.
Okay, they're recommending approval with a condition. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Through you, Mr. Chair, question to staff. It appears that this has been justified through some on-site monitoring of the existing use of the property. Just wondering if the results of that monitoring were reviewed by staff.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I did review their study, and I support the conclusions that they've come up with.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further? Motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is simply a realignment of the existing units or parking spaces on the property, so I move that this be approved with one condition, that they supply a site plan.
Second? Jennifer, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next application is A 2019-33. It's 306 Field Sparrow Crescent. Anyone here in support or opposition? Forward, please. Good morning. Your name?
Good morning. Paul Florica.
All right, Paul. I see that the application's been amended to remove the CVT request. Are you in agreement with that?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Fairly straightforward application. Motion?
Motion to approve the application without conditions.
Second. Scott? All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Next application is A 2019-34, 188 Red Tail Street. Support or opposition? Hi, Paul. How are you?
Still Paul.
Once again, staff are recommending approval with conditions. I don't see any conditions stated. I would suggest, though, that we insert a condition that should be in accordance with the plan dated November 28th, 2018, which is the one that was submitted. Okay, Scott?
Mr. Chairman, we're on the same wavelength today because I was going to ask for a condition that the driveway be constructed as per the sketch submitted with the application. I do want to clarify with the applicant, though, what we're asking for. In the application form, there's two dimensions listed, a 10.45 and a 10.42. And when I do the math, actually on the width of the building, it's even more than that. So I just want to know what you're after and make sure we get it correct. If staff can help out, certainly.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, the planner that was working on the file, I'd spoken to him about this question that came up, and the planner said that he had spoken to Mr. Florica, and it was decided that we would take the measurement that was on the plan, which was the 10.24 meters, and that we would go with that because that would cover all of the possible.
Applicant, you're okay with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? Motion?
So, Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to move the application, subject to the condition that we mentioned. The wording that I would prefer is that the driveway be constructed as per the sketch submitted with the application.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'll second that motion.
All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you very much.
Next application is A 2019-35. That's 186 Kent Ave. Anyone in support or opposition, come forward, please. Good morning. Your name?
Morning. Sandy Bromberg?
Hi, Sandy. Have you had an opportunity to review staff's report?
Yes, we have.
Okay, they're recommending approval with conditions. There's also a GRCA fee condition that needs to be inserted as an additional condition. That would be condition number 4. Does anyone have any further questions or comments?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have a question for staff and a question for the applicant. In terms of the staff report talks about an existing porch, but the photos that are there I don't see the porch unless it is referring to the cement slab steps.
There's a cement porch and then winding stairs that come down around it.
Okay, so it's just that. That's what we're talking about here. Okay.
That's what's existing.
Yeah, if I can. So the existing is a small 3 feet by 3 feet or thereabout porch with stair going down. And the application is to have more of a front porch extending along the front of the dwelling.
Okay, and there's the sketch of what it's going to look like is essentially this, the survey with the...
Correct.
So it's going to extend along past the window.
Correct.
And
Consistent
be
with the
slightly
neighborhood.
larger than the existing.
Correct.
In terms of depth.
Slightly larger in depth, and then width would carry across the front of the house in keeping with the rest of the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Mr. Chair, I'm happy to move that this application be approved if there's no other questions, subject to the conditions set out in the staff report.
And GRCA.
And the GRCA condition.
All right, second?
Sorry, we have a question?
Sure. Sure.
So just clarity around the condition. Talks about the railing being installed provides unobstructed visibility. So what does unobstructed visibility mean? If I'm having a glass railing, I still need backing for that, which would not be clear. So are pickets with a 4-inch spacing unobstructed, or what does that mean? What does that entail?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I was thinking along the lines of what you have on your existing porch. That photo that you submitted, that type of railing.
So as an example, wrought iron, I think that's
Yes.
what's there
Wrought
now.
iron pickets type thing?
Yeah. Just so that it's not a solid fence board or something of that nature, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
So does wood pickets with 4-inch
Sure.
spacing?
That would be acceptable.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, would it be of assistance to the applicant if we actually modified the condition to specify that? Or is it with that clarification sufficient?
I think the clarification is probably sufficient because we don't want to tie their hands to wood or wrought iron or leave them some flexibility to do what they want. How's that?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Motion? Did you? Sorry. Second? Bob, all in favor? Carried. Thanks.
Thank you.
Next application is A 2019-36. It's 296 or 2960 Kingswood Drive. Anyone here in support or opposition, come forward, please.
Good morning.
Good morning. Your name?
Kristen Barrisdale from GSP Group. We are the agents acting on behalf of Cadillac Fairview Realty and Entourage Realty.
All right. If you had an opportunity to review staff's report.
Yes.
And they're recommending approval with conditions. I'd just like to maybe suggest a second condition, and that would be that any parking within the 14 meters of the MTO highway property limit shall not be counted as part of the required 2,148 spaces. Just for clarification, I don't believe that they are now in any event, correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, they're not. The site plan that is in with the city right now that's being considered has currently taken out those parking spaces within the setback. They're not part of our regulatory requirement.
Right. So I think we should just clarify that in this recommendation then as well. All right. Anyone else have any questions or comments? Bob?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I do have a couple of concerns. The MTO has included in their report that there are certain regulations that must, based on them, must be adhered to. So I'd like some further explanation on that from staff or the applicant. Another concern I have, a minor concern, is that a zero setback is not a minor setback. When you go to zero, it becomes infinite. And that's just a comment. So if staff can shed some light on the MTO concerns.
I think I'll defer the MTO concerns to Ms. Barrisdale, who's had probably some communication with them. But with respect to the zero setback, that is for the frontage that's along Highway 8. So, I mean, it's not an area where there would be actual impact on anyone. So staff would kindly recommend that be, that the variance is appropriate, simply because it's just along the Highway 8 frontage. So, but perhaps Ms. Barrisdale can shed some light on some of the MTO numbers.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Chair. So the variance that is in front of you right now is actually reflective of an existing condition that was put in place when the Highway 8 ramp was constructed. The previous minor variance that we actually had in place for this property specified that the variance was only in effect until any new applications have come forward. As you may be aware, Cadillac Fairview has announced recent plans to provide for significant intensification and redevelopment on the site, which is kind of a phased process that's happening right now. So they've pretty much received approval for what we call the housekeeping amendment, which essentially reflected changes to the entrance and parking as a result of the construction of the LRT. We've recently submitted what we refer to as Phase 1 of the site plan application, which is essentially the repurposing of the former Sears space, bringing some additional commercial retail uses out. Because the parking lot to the west side of the Sears, the east side of the Sears, is being slightly revised for pavement markings, etc. And because it's technically changing the development as it exists, city staff had requested that we come in with the minor variance to essentially allow those permissions to continue to move forward. The intent of the application is kind of temporary in nature. Cadillac Fairview is in the process right now preparing a zone change application that will be followed by a subsequent site plan application that's providing for additional office and commercial uses at that corner where that interchange is. So the entire parking structure, existing circumstances and environment as it exists right now along Highway 8 will likely be changed again in the future. This variance is essentially to give us the appropriate approvals required in order to facilitate the Stage 1 site plan from a technical compliance perspective.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I note that this is to be it's set up as a temporary variance that will remain valid until such time as lots F and G develop. But I just want to be clear that upon the development of lots F and G, that doesn't mean that this variance, that the lands have to change in respect of these variances. They just become legal non-conforming at that point in time. So I just wanted that to be clear, that there's nothing here that would compel them to change the zero setback at the time of lots F and G developing. It would just render them legal non-conforming if this minor variance expires, if that's even possible.
It's a question for staff.
I think it's more of a comment for...
Comment, okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may, the way that the previous the previous minor variance application had very similar wording, and it spoke to the property as it existed on the date of the passing of the last minor variance. It was staff's interpretation because we've come in for a new site plan. We technically triggered the requirement to have to come forward to legalize that existing 0.0 meter setback. It's our understanding and assumption that the wording of this condition is pretty much the same. So any future site plan application that comes in to change that essentially renders this decision, which will happen today, void, and that we'd have to come forward either through the committee or through a zone change application process to once again legalize that existing condition, if it were to stay.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I suspect that staff will ask for that and that the applicant will comply, but I just want to be technically accurate that that's what will happen, that there's no absolute expiration of this. It deems it legal non-complying at that point if those actions are not taken.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else? Motion? Questions?
Mr. Chair, thanks to the applicant for clearing up some of the questions that we had. I move that this be approved with the one condition as in the staff report.
Two conditions.
Two conditions?
Yeah, the other one that the 14 meters of the MTO highway property limit shall not be counted as part of the required 2,148 spaces.
Okay.
Okay. So that's the motion. Second, Scott, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next applications, A 2019-37. Anyone here in support or opposition, come forward, please. Valencia Court.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. My name is Pierre Chauvin with MHBC Planning, here on behalf of the owner Activa Holdings in support of the application.
All right, straightforward application. Anyone have any questions or comments? Or a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll move that this application be approved without condition.
Second? Scott, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next applications, B 2019-11, 75 Tisley Drive. Anyone support or opposition, come forward, please. Good morning. Your name?
Morning, Mr. Chair. My name is Hugh Handy, and I'm a land use planner with GSP Group.
Okay, Hugh. You've had an opportunity to review staff's report, recommending approval with conditions. There's also a regional condition, and there was a bell request on the retained lands. I don't really see if that's applicable because it's already existing, and that's the retained lands in any event. Sorry, how's that? There's I'm just making note that there was a bell request for the retained lands. I gather that's the retained lands for an easement for the existing services, but I'm not really sure if that's applicable to this application in any event. I just had a question myself for staff, and it's in regards to parkland dedication. So it says that the property was subject to parkland originally. Dedication, but would that have been applicable to institutional use at the time? Did you pay parkland on institutional use? Yeah. Okay, I just wasn't sure if that would have been applicable to the institutional use lands of that plan of subdivision. I didn't know if that was policy or not, and if not, this is going to be a change to residential for the severed parcels. So I just
it was for the entire plan of subdivision, so that was when the 5% was taken. Yeah.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Scott?
Just to clarify, Mr. Chairman, you mentioned one regional condition. I'm seeing two, and I just had a question for the applicant. You okay with the two conditions?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, we are happy with the conditions.
Okay. Thanks, Scott. Anything else?
Yes, Mr. Chair, just a quick question for staff. Understanding that this is designated as institutional in the official plan, I'm just curious as to staff's opinion as to how this application conforms to the official plan.
Currently, the lands are designated institutional, but the zoning that is in effect permits residential uses, and it's the zoning that would allow this use to exist. With respect to the designation prior to that, the site was permitted to have residential uses in the existing official plan. With due respect, providing no variances for the site or whatever, just the creation of the lot is what we're dealing with today. And the future use, if depending on timing, would have to conform with whatever zoning is in effect. We're in a site of transition right now. Timing it would be really essential. So currently the zoning still would permit this use. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's very helpful.
Okay. Anyone else? Motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that this be approved with the addition of the two conditions from the region.
Second.
Which would make 11 conditions.
Jennifer, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next application is B 2019-12, 53 Lichty Crescent. Anyone here in support or opposition, come forward, please.
Good morning, all. My name is Ray Krashnik.
All right. We'll just get through the formalities here before we hear from, I would gather, opposition to this application. Staff's recommending approval with conditions. If you had an opportunity to review and understand the conditions. Have you read staff's report?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Region is looking for a further condition. You need to insert that if this is to be considered as well. and we'll just let you walk through briefly your application, please. Just explain the nature of what you're trying to do here.
I barely can hear.
Walk through your application, please. Just explain the nature of what your application is, just for the benefit of the people that are sitting on my left.
What are you proposing to do with the site?
Severance and build two residential. As it shows here on the plan, I'm planning to severance in 2 lots and build 2 houses.
Okay. All right. I guess we'll move on and hear from the opposition. Are you here collectively or as one spokesperson, or I'm just trying to get a mechanics of this down first?
We're all neighbors on Lichty Crescent, so we all live on the street.
Right.
So
okay. Do you want to speak as one person with everyone supporting what's being said, or 2 people, or?
I think we're
Okay. I'm just trying to simplify the thing. That's all. And then, if something's been said, we don't need to repeat it because it's noted in the notes, anyways.
Okay.
Okay. Your name?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. My name's Diane Taylor, and I live on Lichty Crescent. I have a petition here that I'd like to submit, and it's from the neighbors on the street opposing 2 two-story duplexes be built on our street. Our biggest concern is a safety issue here. We are a street of 12 homes currently. There are no sidewalks on this street, and there are no storm sewers. Safety is a big issue. Twice a day, parking is a major issue, with parents dropping off and picking up their children. Cars are on both sides of the street, are parked around the circle in the center of the crescent. Building 2 duplexes would only add major parking concerns and safety. As well, with 2 duplexes, you would have at least a minimum of 4 additional cars and 4 families, which this street cannot handle. All the homes on this street are small, single-family homes. 2 duplexes would be an eyesore to our community. There are environmental concerns as well. We have lost 7 mature trees already. According to the staff report, there was some grading issues, and we're having a hard time understanding how you're going to have a grading issue when you have a property that's flat, but you're proposing a walkout. So in my limited knowledge, you're going to have retaining walls, you're going to have draining issues, and I just see a lot of problems coming from this. Aaron?
So to summarize, just to get the main point, so there's traffic, it's a density issue, and grading issues, correct? Okay, thank you. All right.
Hi, I'm Erin McCabe. I live next door to the property. In addition to some of those concerns that Diane has raised, Mackenzie King Public School is directly behind our house. The walkway goes up to the street. So in addition to, that the kids are walking along the street, and if construction is going to be happening, I wanted to make sure that there's 245 students at Mackenzie King.
And 7 disabilities.
And 7 with disabilities. I wanted to know what kind of plans were going to be put in place for when they could do the construction, and just making sure that the site is safe for all the kids, including my own. There's 3 families, Nick and another family. There's 8 children that live on the street as well and play freely. My husband had a question about the power lines to the property. We do not have power lines that go under the street, so we wanted to know if there's going to be another pole added. The way that the property line is distributed between our house and the other house is on a very severe angle, and we are concerned that there might be some things put on his property but in front of our house. I think mostly what we have is just kind of questions. We don't feel like we've gotten a clear view of what the structure is going to look like that's going to be built there. And who is living there. We've heard some different stories.
Okay, thank you. Scott?
Just to clarify, you're at 45, Lichty?
That's correct.
Okay, and have you had an opportunity to speak to staff about any of your issues?
I've spoken with Eric Schneider a little bit, and most of the concerns that I had, he told me that I needed to speak with building and development, and said that because this meeting was just for severance, that he couldn't address my concerns. So that's as far as I've gotten with that.
All right. Possibly to move this forward, maybe it would be best to hear from staff first, because you wrote a recommendation with some conditions to support the application, and we might get a better understanding through you opposed to the applicant. So from what I gather, there's the traffic, there's the singles versus the duplex, grading issues, and safety during construction.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair. Well, firstly, I'd like to state I do have Eric Schneider here who has reviewed the application in more detail, so he can speak to some of the comments. But just generally speaking, duplexes are permitted in this zone and are permitted by the official plan. They're not offending the official plan or the zoning of the category. So it is something that is an as-of-right permission. But with respect to some of the specifics of the development, I will defer those comments to Eric, who is here to answer those questions.
Thanks. Through the chair, we had discussions with the owner prior to this application coming in. There was concerns with this lot turning into 3 lots at one point, and requesting minor variances for that, as they would be slightly deficient in lot width. In the end, it was agreed to do 2 lots, which are providing 23 meters each in lot width, whereas the minimum is 13.9. We believe that the lot sizes are very similar to what's existing there on Lichty Crescent. And although this property is outside of the Rienz area, residential intensification in established neighborhoods, we asked the applicant that they set back the homes to match what's on the street, and they agreed to do so, to set them back at 9 meters, whereas the minimum is 4.5. So again, as Julianne mentioned, the application is for severance only. There's no minor variances sought, and it conforms to the official plan, and that's why staff has wrote this recommendation for approval.
Okay, thanks, Eric. Any questions?
I share a similar concern, or at least question, as one of the residents made about grading. I don't know what the existing topography is of the site. Perhaps someone could speak to that. And because I do see also these are walkouts, so is it fill, is it cut, is it existing condition to some extent? I want to understand the existing grading versus what's being proposed. And if there is substantial changes proposed, I don't see a condition relating to grading, and I'm wondering, well, certainly if this is going ahead, there should probably be one. So I guess I'll put that over to the applicant first in terms of the existing grading versus the proposed grading.
I'm sorry, I have trouble hearing you.
Can you tell us about the existing topography of the site, the grading, the existing grading of the site, and how that relates to the proposed grading of the site? I want to know what the grading is now and what the grading is going to be after the buildings are erected.
We did hire an engineer for a grading, and according to him, it's going to be half walkout, not full walkout. And existing house is got a half walkout right now, so it's going to be basically the same what's there now. So there is no any changes.
That's not what the plans show that I've seen.
I'm a little confused then, because your plan shows a full walkout, not a half walkout.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't know if staff has any insight into the existing versus proposed grading?
We did get that concern from Erin. She spoke to me about that, and I contacted the applicant. I did visit the site, and it does look very flat now. But again, the regulations that were reviewed for this application were for severance only. They're understanding that a grading plan is going to have to be submitted as part of a building permit when these lots are created and these conditions are cleared. So grading wasn't something that was reviewed as part of the lot creation.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I can just comment on that, there's extensive engineering conditions attached to this severance, and I don't see how grading would not be fit right in with the rest of them. We have to ensure that the proposed use is appropriate and in the public interest. So I think that it's important to consider the grading implications for this development at this time, knowing that it's proposed for 2 duplex dwellings. I think we need to know that. At the very least, we need a condition, I would suggest, that would require grading be reviewed to staff satisfaction and confirm that there is going to be no change to quantity or the existing drainage onto surrounding properties. Zero impact on surrounding properties.
Yes. So through the chair, during the discussions, engineering noted that there is no stormwater facilities on this street. So there is a condition that the applicant would either have to extend the storm sewer or provide a design solution with infiltration or sump pumps in order to correct that drainage. And other drainage and grading, like I said, is done through building permits, which would be a later process, which is already required with the building code.
I like your suggestion, and that's a further condition. For approval of satisfactory cut and fill permits and grading, taken into consideration for zero impact to neighboring properties, something like that.
Thank you, sir. I would agree with that condition. I think it's, we're hearing from the applicant. The applicant doesn't even know what the proposed grading is, so I think it's important to sort that out now.
Yeah.
Can I ask a further question? Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
If this is just for severance, they can change the plans after getting a severance. They could sell one of the properties and decide to do something else entirely, yes? There's no real requirement that they maintain any of this plan. So really, this severance, all the plans here would just be to sever the property, sell it, do something else, change the plans down the road, and go through this process all over again, yes? Mm-hmm. And because of the inconsistencies, that, I guess, is another concern that maybe wasn't mentioned, that it doesn't seem like the plan is solid. It doesn't seem like the research has been done. I think there was supposed to be a tree survey done, which probably wasn't done, and some trees came down accidentally. And because of that, that's the concern, I think, for the neighborhood as well, is it in the best interest for the community? We are a community. We do have block parties. We do, spend time with each other outside on I would say, almost weekly basis. The kids are all hanging out together. They're going to be going to school together. And we're looking to have a neighborhood that supports that. Not to say that duplexes don't, but single-family houses with kids that are going to be staying in the neighborhood and going to the same school and growing up together versus moving tenants in and out year over year due to any sort of concern. That's what I would say. Nick Jochum.
Thank you. Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The resident actually beat me to the punch on several questions for staff. So I'll start with one question. You mentioned the RIN's, I don't even know how to pronounce it, REN's infill stuff. Is this going to be subject to site plan approval, the new dwellings?
Through the chair, no duplex dwellings require just a building permit. 3 units is when site plan approval is required.
Okay. Second question, you mentioned that you're going to ensure that the setback is maintained at around 9 meters, but without site plan approval, how do you do that?
Through the chair, this is the proposal that the applicant has submitted. There's nothing that ties them to this at this point because they're just asking for a severance of 2 lots. The R3 zone permits singles and duplexes mainly. Those are the two dwelling types. So after the lots are created, it's possible that they could be singles or duplexes with just a building permit.
Just a follow-up question then. The existing home that's on the site, one of the attachments to the application doesn't really show what the setback is. I'm sure staff has researched to figure out what the existing front yard setback is for that house.
Yes, it was about 10 or 11 meters, between 10 and 11 meters.
So then 9 would actually put it in front of the house I'm going to look to the right of what I'm looking at, and considerably in front of house number 45.
Yes, the way that the lot is shaped irregularly, part of it comes forward in front of the lot at 45. So because of that, it might project slightly in front of that existing house. But again, the minimum setback in this zone is 4.5 meters or 6 meters with a garage.
Well, just to be clear to staff, if somebody came back and built at 4.5 meters, I don't think that maintains the character on the street. So if I'm going to support this application, it has to be to nail down where these new dwellings are going to go. So I have to think about what I want to do here.
I would probably suggest maybe a further condition with a setback requirement would handle your concern.
I'm leaning that way, Mr. Chair. I feel a bit of sympathy for the residents, although they have to understand, as staff has pointed out, that this whole area allows for duplexes. The lots themselves conform or comply in all respects to the zoning. It's just how this happens during construction and what these buildings end up looking at and where they're situated on the site, I think is very important to me. If we were to consider a condition that the setback of the new homes be minimum 10 meters, that would force the applicant to actually redesign these homes. And I'm concerned about doing that because I don't think 9 meters is going to be that bad. But I think there definitely needs to be a condition.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I couldn't support a condition like that. I don't think it's legal to limit the as-of-right zoning permissions. So I couldn't go there. Perhaps given the concerns that have been raised, this application is premature until a building permit application has been submitted or some detailed drawings for what's being proposed have been submitted so that we can have a better idea of what the proposed use of the land is. And just some other general comments to the neighbors. As Ms. Von Westerholt indicated, duplexes are as of right. We can't limit that. Your concerns about parking and whatnot, that can't be addressed. And that's not just an official plan issue. That is legislated. The Planning Act, as of right, allows for duplexes. So they could build 2 houses and then subsequently duplex it, and there would be no ability to stop them from doing that. In my opinion, looking just at what is proposed, although it's not tied down at this point, I think it does fit the character of the area. I think the lot widths match. I think the proposed siting of the buildings does fit the character. We do have other situations on this crescent where you have houses sort of stepped back from each other. So I think that's an existing component of the character that would not be offended by the proposal. And the proposed setbacks also, as staff has indicated, would attempt to also meet the character. So I think the proposal is appropriate, subject to confirming grading, but we can't tie them to this proposal at this time. So I'm wondering, my thought is that it may be premature until there are drawings that the applicant is satisfied with constructing for the site.
I think we have those, do we not? These are your drawings, are they not, that you want to construct?
Could you say that again, please?
Are these your drawings that you want to construct? That you submitted with the application?
Yes, yes, they are. Yes, exactly what it is.
So in essence, we already have them, Jennifer, so. I just maybe have staff's opinion in regards to the condition that was suggested by Scott for the setback. What's your view on that?
Staff would agree with Ms. Meter that they have as of right permissions in the existing zoning, and putting a condition on it that a minimum...
Negative in nature.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. That said, though, if you take a look at the aerial of this entire cul-de-sac, you can see how the houses are set back, and it depends on the shape of the lot and where exactly they fit around the cul-de-sac. The front yard variance does shift slightly. And I think that what this gentleman is proposing with his lot, again, due to the geometry of the site, would also necessitate some, I guess, some give and take in terms of where the front yard is. And I didn't hear that being a concern from the residents. What I heard was grading, which I think is a valid concern, and it's not something that staff would downplay. We may not have all that information today, as Ms. Meter has said, but to not create the lots that conform with zoning, I'm not sure that waiting a month for, I'm not sure for another design would change that, because I think we all heard that we can't tie this gentleman to the plan that is submitted. The gentleman has indicated that this is the plan that he wishes to proceed with. Perhaps a condition that requires that grading, although grading is approved through the building permit process, as Eric mentioned early on in the meeting, perhaps if you want to solidify it with an additional condition on the grading, I think that is appropriate, but taking away zoning permissions that they have as of right, I don't agree with that.
I guess the setback would only pertain to parking, which would address the concern if it was, you get more vehicles in the driveway, is really due to the fact that it's duplexes, but I don't think there's anything that we can do to impose that either.
Through you, Mr. Chair, understanding that this is what the applicant wants to build, thank you for that, Ms. Von Westerholt, and we can't tie them to these drawings because they would never be able to clear the condition. But we can tie them to a grading. I think we can ask for a grading plan that would be related to these drawings, a grading assuming that these are going to be built and that be submitted and signed off on and confirm that there will be no adverse impacts on the surrounding properties. With that, sir, Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to support the application.
All right. Support the application with the addition of the regional conditions and the grading condition. Is that correct, Scott?
Yes, sir.
Just a comment. I'm going to support the application as well. And again, it's on the basis that realistically what we're here for today is to sever the parcels or the parcel into two, and the existing size of the property and the parcels that are being created comply in all respects to the zoning for the area. I hope that the applicant, and this is a comment, will carry through with the siting of where the homes are right now, because I think it works. If he comes back with a different design, I'd have my concerns, but I will support what's on the floor.
All right.
We have a question here.
I'll second that.
Second? Okay. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Sorry, can I ask
Yes.
a couple of questions? So in terms of the designs of these houses going forward, some of the things show putting side entrances beside our house and these guys who live on the other side. What's the process to kind of have a discussion with him about how we could potentially make these houses a little more conducive to our existing structures? Like, could we put these walkways on the, like, facing the inside of the two new houses? My son's bedroom window is literally right there, and could we talk about where the windows are going to go in these new houses? Like, where's the process to kind of talk about those types of concerns that I have?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I would assume that the only process available is a friendly neighbor conversation, so there really isn't anything available to the city.
Okay.
We can just regulate the regulations and the bylaws, and that's it, so.
Okay. And one more question then. Since you're going to approve severing the lot, and there is going to be a reduction in the amount of parking that's available on the road for the parents that drop their kids off at school and stuff, that's already a concern that we've had in the neighborhood for a few years. Where do we address those concerns, just to make it a little more safer for the kids as they're coming in?
Through you, Mr. Chair, you can contact the supervisor of crossing guards.
Okay.
His name is Dean McMillan.
Okay.
You can contact him.
Okay. Would they put a crossing guard on the street or something?
In your court?
Yeah.
I don't think they would.
Okay.
But you could discuss that with Dean.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Julianne?
I just wanted to let the residents know, too, that you had mentioned a comment about windows and openings. All of those things are regulated under the Ontario Building Code. So there has to be safe distances and whatnot between those buildings, and it's regulated. That is provincial legislation. As Ms. Meter said, legislation is legislation, so the city's building department would have to abide by that before issuing any building permits.
Okay, could I ask one more question then, please? So when you look at the property line, part of his property comes directly in front of my house. Is there anything at the moment that is planned, like that is going to be put there, like a hydro pole to get power to these houses or anything like that?
Can't answer that.
Okay.
This committee can't answer that. So.
It's our only opportunity to kind of ask the questions that we have concerns about, and we haven't had the opportunity to speak with Ray that much about these, so we're trying to take the opportunity that we had. So thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So that application is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next application is B 2019-13-118 Dune Valley Drive. Supporter opposition, come forward, please. All right, Kristen, have you had an opportunity to review staff's report?
I have.
They're recommending approval with conditions. Fairly straightforward application. Anyone have any questions or comments? Bob?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to staff, and this may sound a little weird coming from me, this is just reestablishing a lot that was pre-existing. And so my question would be, this is no new redevelopment, no new development or redevelopment, so why is the city asking for parkland?
I would assume that it hadn't been collected. We rely on our parks staff to flag when parkland dedication is required. It may not have been collected at that time of the original lot creation.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, seeing there's some ambiguity on this, I find it difficult to support this, and staff knows I'm a big supporter of parkland dedication and have been for a long time. This is just taking an existing home and converting it back to, it was intended to be part of a development that is not moving ahead, and so it's reverting back to what it was 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. There's no new development, there's no redevelopment, and I am of the opinion that I don't think a parkland dedication is appropriate.
Christian, do you know how this was amalgamated? Was this taken in an identical title by mistake?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the property, it's essentially merged on title because the individual owner owns the property in behind as well as 69 Amherst along. It's functioned as a single detached dwelling for as long as he's owned the property, and it's essentially just reestablishing the property lines.
Do you know approximately when that happened?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not quite certain. I would expect within the last 5 to 10 years. I know it was when Mr. Jan acquired the property in behind.
Right.
But I can't say for certain.
So he inadvertently took it in same title, which he shouldn't have when he closed. So I see your point, Bob. I can support that thinking as well.
Just through you, Mr.
Yeah.
Chair, some clarification. There's a mention of a development that's not going ahead. Is that, I mean, there's this existing parcel that's going to be, the portion to be retained. Is that proposed for development?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, it was subject to a zone change and official plan amendment a number of years ago, a subsequent OMB hearing, and then there has been a settlement that's been put forth to the LPAC committee right now that provides for 27 townhouse units, street townhouse units on the majority of the center of the site.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else or a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I will move that this be approved as amended with removing the cash in lieu of parkland dedication, with the understanding that I am a big supporter of parkland dedications. I don't think it's appropriate in this particular situation.
Second. Scott, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next application is B 2019-005, B 2019-006, A 2019-27, and A 2019-128. It's 151 Wentworth Ave. Support or opposition, come forward, please. Okay, your name?
Mark Benjamins.
You've had an opportunity to review staff report?
Yes, I have.
Recommending approval with conditions. Do you have any questions? You understand all the conditions?
It all seems clear.
Okay. I gather you're in opposition?
Yeah, we are from the 155 Wentworth Avenue, first neighbor.
Okay, I think in this case what we'll do is we'll hear the opposition first and tackle it that way. So,
We are just concerned about our house, and that house, if it's approved to build just beside my fence, it's going to be so close that even snow will come in my side of the house, because my side door from my fence, it's only 6 feet. So I don't know. We want to know how much house will be from my fence. Plus, my fence is attached to the garage on the brick, so you know what the kind of soil is. It's only sand. And we never had water in our basement or some cracks, so we are concerned about once they build in that house, what's going to be after.
so just to make sure that we understand, you're concerned about the closeness to your property?
Yes.
Okay, that's the main concern, and you said water in the basement as well. Okay, and what address are you at again? What's your address again?
155.
155? Okay, all right.
And one more thing.
Yes.
I know they don't know, but once those contractors build a house, build a street, like 3-4 years ago, once they measuring, they saw that property was in this former owner property. I don't know how much, like probably 1 meter. So there is now opportunity to build a house on previous land, which is not fair. But you have your rule here.
Yeah, it was also 2 property lines. It was originally a road, and the guy who did our fence, he went even 1 foot in our property too. So it's over 1 year, so that's fine now. I know the law of Kitchener. If fence is older 1 year, so it stay the property line, but it is.
Okay, let me just let the applicant, did you understand the concerns?
I understand the concerns about the closeness of the house, but I didn't exactly get the last part about...
The water in the basement?
Sorry?
The water in the basement one, you mean, Mark?
No, I think they're talking about a fence or something like that. Or existing lots being severed a few years ago. I didn't catch that part.
Well, we actually was almost eaten alive. I was talking to Mr. Mayor, and I explained my issue because they had a pit bull dogs, 6 of them, and they had a puppies too. So I had to guard my property because law in Kitchener is you don't have to have a fence just because you have a pet, but the pets had to be on a leash. But these were not on leash. So we had a really bad experience with the tenants of that neighbor previously. So we don't want to raise another issue, but we kind of protect ourselves with the fence.
All right, I think that's just a general comment. Okay, all right.
And the other thing, sorry, once did the approval on the right side of the street for parking, so now so many people parking already there, so if we get plus one more townhouse, whatever, what is it, there's going to be more cars on the street, and we have a hard way to get backwards.
Yeah, the street is so narrow.
Yeah, it's so narrow, so we don't have anybody else to support us, but they are all agree will be like a really disaster there.
My other question, where all those parking will be? Is it underground parking?
In the rear, they're proposing the rear of the lot.
On the rear? Okay.
And behind, yeah. So that should probably alleviate any concern with
parking
on the street.
So it's not going to be underground parking?
No.
Okay, thank you.
No.
And the one-way driveway is going to be between?
Yes. There'll be a shared driveway between.
Yeah, okay.
Which works. That's like that all over the city.
I just want to ask one question. What is the law? How many feet supposed to be from my fence now, like, to build a house?
There is a variance being requested for one side yard reduction only for the retained lot of, what is it? Instead of 3 meters, it's 1.89. And then for the severed lot, I'm not sure which side of whether they're going to be closer to the severed or the retained lot. I don't know where the property is in relation to the subject property. So the one side yard will be 1.39 meters, and the other side yard will be 1.89 meters. So I guess it depends on which side you're living.
It's my garage and my kitchen that side. So
no, I can't tell from here, but
I know.
You know, are you this house that's right beside and?
I'm living here. There's a fence. You see fence? That's my house.
Oh, so you're on the other side. Okay.
Yeah.
There's only fence in that street because we built it because of the really dangerous dogs. They've been unleashed all the time, day and night.
The reduction in side yard is for the purposes of the shared driveway.
That's right.
So if it just
so you still have
1.3
your
meters.
You have your 3. I can't read it. It's too small. Perhaps the applicant can answer the question in terms of what kind of a side yard he's providing on the side where the resident is residing. I can't read it. It's too small. Yeah.
Mark, can you answer that?
I have it. It'd be 1.2 meters, which I believe falls within zoning.
Okay.
And to speak to any sort of pets, we took possession of the property last year, and we've hopefully you've been able to see for yourselves done an extensive renovating to the existing duplex. Not that it was necessarily required, but we do our utmost to find quality tenants, and we don't want to disparage the neighborhood in any way. So we certainly would be open to having conversations outside.
I spoke to your father, and he said the same thing. However, people might look nice, but now with smoking weed, even rich people does. I have a business which I had to clean very rich renting spaces like for rich people, and we have an issue with that too. So I know it's your business, it's your property, but I'm concerned.
Okay, it sounds like you two can have a conversation later on. You're both willing to do it, so we'll move this application forward. Scott, you had a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of questions for staff and the applicant. First one for staff. Will this application be subject to your infill kind of site plan process?
You mean the Rienz study?
Yes.
There is no special site plan process for the Rienz area. There is a bylaw amendment that was changed. We could ask for a site plan if we needed to, but we didn't ask for a site plan in this case.
Question then for the applicant. Have you done any preliminary grading, drainage, and servicing drawings for this particular development?
We've talked with professionals. We haven't completed any drawings pertaining to the drainage, but we are aware of the storm sewer not being at the property line, and it is our intention to come up with a concept that satisfies that. Likely won't be building a basement for the proposed duplex.
Okay, how in the rear yard where you're proposing the parking area, how much fill do you anticipate there to get positive storm sewer drainage out to the street?
We don't expect to put any fill because of the grading. The lot line naturally goes towards the street. We've talked to Eric Reich about it, and he hasn't necessarily said that there's any requirements to that. We talked about possibly doing a French drain in the rear parking area if that's required. It doesn't sound like that is what is required.
Okay. The reason I'm asking the question, and just for the benefit of the app or for the neighbor, where they have their lovely board fence, you're within a foot of that board fence. So what type of grade difference are we looking at there for those two parking spaces? Is it going to be matching grade? Is it going to be up 3 feet, 2 feet? I need to know that.
It's going to be on the existing grade. There's not going to be any change. We're not going to elevate the parking or anything like that.
Just for the benefit of the committee, just to comment to the committee, the reason I'm asking these questions is that entire rear yard area is effectively a paved area now. It does have a garage on it right now. I'm just worried it's going to be filled, which would impact the neighbors. The only condition we have is 13, relates to preparing the servicing plan. It would have been nice to have something in a preliminary format to look at this.
Okay, I think engineering can take care of that adequately, though. So that's their primary function, and they've always done a stellar job before in the past. So, is there any other questions or comments or motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair. It's always difficult when there's an infill development. It disrupts neighborhoods. But time moves on. It's interesting that we're being asked to approve a shared driveway, a new shared driveway. We don't see those very often. Having heard what the applicant and what the neighbors have said, I will move that this be approved. There's the first portion has 15 conditions, the second one has 7 conditions, and the third and fourth don't have any conditions. So I move that this be approved as per the staff report.
Second? All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, last application is being requested for deferral. Do we have a date proposed for this deferral? This is 128 Mill Street, application B 2019-14, 2019-38. This application is going to be deferred, so it won't be heard at this meeting. Sorry, I didn't realize you were here. Do we know what they want, when do they want to defer this to the next meeting, or has that been indicated? I don't want to just keep on deferring and deferring.
Mr. Chair, but is the applicant, May 21st.
Okay, so we'll defer this to the next meeting, May 21st.
Yep.
And my colleague has some directive comments he would like to make. in this
Thank you,
regard.
Mr. Chair. Hopefully this is not out of line for staff, but my experience with flag lots is one where the rear dwelling ends up getting popped out of the ground because of the ability to require a long lateral on sanitary sewer to get positive drainage. So I'm hoping that staff will take this as a nice direction, that when it comes back, we get a better understanding of grading, drainage, and servicing for this particular development, just so we understand those implications.
Okay. Good. Motion to adjourn. Thank you. Second. There we go. All in favor, carried. Done. Thank you.